Sometimes bad shifts happen to good people. On most autocross courses, I only need to shift once. But on longer, faster courses, my V6 runs out of RPM in second gear and I need to shift into third. Because every thousandth of a second counts, every shift is incredibly important. Missing a shift can mean missing out on a trophy. This season, my shifts got sloppy. Shifting into third wasn't always as easy as 1, 2, 3. I money shifted from second gear into first at 5,500 RPM at one event. By some miracle, I didn't damage the car, but the sound of my little 3.8 liter revving close to 7,000 RPM hurt my soul. Luckily, I managed to finish in first place at that event. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only shifting strife I had. I missed a shift into second gear at 2 events. Missing those shifts cost me time and positions in the CAM-T standings. I finished in 3rd place and 7th place at those events. Even though I have a Steeda triax shifter, my shifts didn't feel as confident as they used to. I also noticed a high RPM shifter rattle shortly after the money shift. This video covers the simple mods I made to get my Mustang's shifting back in sync, and my initial impressions after using the upgrades at 4 autocross events. My first thought was that the shifter bushing in the T5 had failed. The OEM plastic bushing can wear out or break over time. So I'm putting in a Steeda DELRIN shifter bushing. DELRIN offers high strength and low friction. Its better chemical abrasion and temperature resistance make it an ideal material for this application. According to Steeda, the DELRIN bushing will provide smooth shifting and reduce vibrations caused by a worn-out shifter bushing. I also discovered the silicone shifter handle gasket I installed when I built this car was squished and torn. I decided to install a Steeda shifter NVH isolator kit, which is a fancy name for a piece of rubber that goes between the shifter handle and the shifter lever, longer bolts, and 2 jam nuts. It fits 1979 to 2004 Mustangs and works with most shifters. Steeda says this kit is designed to prevent transmission noise from migrating up the shifter. In order to install the Steeda DELRIN shifter bushing, I had to pry the shifter free of the T5 to break the RTV seal. I noticed the transmission was moving side to side much more than it should. The money shift and one of the missed shifts happened on banked sections of the track. I suspected that part of the reason I was missing gears was that the transmission was moving to one side as I was on the banking. My V6's transmission mount appears to be OEM, which means it's almost 20 years old. I'm replacing it with a Stifflers transmission crossmember. The adjustable design works with a variety of transmissions in 1999 to 2004 Mustangs. This crossmember maintains your existing pinion angle, and it allows for more exhaust clearance than the OEM version. According to Stifflers, the polyurethane bushings will still dampen driveline vibrations and noise while providing firm, positive shifts. To be fair to Steeda and Stifflers, my V6 has a lot of mods that add NVH, so I don't expect these 3 upgrades to completely eliminate the high RPM shifter rattle. I'll be pleasantly surprised if they do. I'm hoping they will improve the feel and accuracy of every shift, especially the aggressive gear changes out on course. Let's start with the shifter upgrades. To install the Steeda DELRIN shifter bushing, I needed a small adjustable wrench, an interior trim removal tool, a 3/8 drive ratchet and 13mm socket, a pry bar, a dead blow hammer, Scotch-Brite, brake cleaner, RTV, and some transmission fluid. I also had to use a 1/4-inch drive ratchet and extension with a 7mm socket, a jack, and a bell jack, but not everyone will need them to do this job. The Steeda DELRIN Shifter Bushing and NVH Isolator kit didn't come with instructions, but the Triax shifter instructions available on Steeda's website have a lot of helpful information. I used the adjustable wrench to remove the shift knob and the interior trim tool to remove the shifter bezel and boot. I disconnected the cigarette lighter and removed the shifter handle. The lower shifter dust boot will come out with the center console in place on 1994 to 2004 Mustangs. I removed the boot guard washer from the lever, then I took out the 4 bolts attaching the shifter to the transmission. Tough RTV sealing the shifter to the T5 meant I couldn't easily pry the shifter off, so I had to remove the center console to get leverage with a pry bar. I used the 1/4-inch drive ratchet and extension and 7mm socket to remove the center console. Prying on the shifter from above and reinstalling the shifter handle to get more leverage didn't work. I had to jack the car up and use the pry bar and dead blow hammer to break the RTV seal from below. I put 2 bolts in loosely to prevent the shifter from flying off. With the shifter off, I removed the old shifter bushing. To my surprise, it wasn't broken or worn out. I packed shop towels into the transmission to prevent debris from getting in, cleaned the RTV off of the shifter and shifter bolts, and off of the transmission and out of the bolt holes with Scotch-Brite and brake cleaner. I installed the Steeda DELRIN Shifter Bushing, added a little transmission fluid to replace what the shop towels soaked up, put a thin bead of RTV on the transmission, and reinstalled the shifter. If you're using a Steeda Triax shifter, check and reset the stops. And don't forget the boot guard washer on the lever. After I installed the shifter, I put the Steeda Shifter NVH Isolator kit in place. I used 2 13mm wrenches to do the install. Compared to what came out of the car, the Steeda Isolator is much thicker. When you reinstall the shifter handle, make sure the lower shifter dust boot doesn't get caught between the handle and the isolator, or between the bottom nut and the shifter lever. Together, installing the Steeda DELRIN Shifter Bushing and the Steeda Shifter NVH Isolator kit took me 4 hours. But that includes a 30-minute battle to get the center console out because my parking brake handle doesn't go up as high as necessary, 10 minutes of fruitless prying on the shifter, 5 minutes of checking how much the transmission was moving, and 10 minutes to jack the car up and get it back down on the ground. To install the Stifflers transmission crossmember, I needed a 1/2-inch drive ratchet, breaker bar, and extension, 13mm, 16mm, 17mm, and 19mm sockets, a tape measure, blue thread locker, a jack and 4 jack stands, and a bell jack and a block of wood to support the transmission when the OEM crossmember was out. The Stifflers transmission crossmember comes with good instructions that include color photos, which are very helpful. The Stifflers transmission crossmember can be installed in multiple orientations. You'll need to check the table to find the picture that corresponds to your transmission. The T5 uses picture number 4, which shows the position of the bushings. Here's a better look at the setup. I called Stifflers to clarify one part of the instructions. If you're installing the Stifflers transmission crossmember with a T5, you only need to use the thicker spacers as washers between the bolts and the crossmember when mounting it to the body, not all 4 spacers. It's not in the instructions, but Stifflers also recommends using thread locker on the bolts. Always follow proper safety procedures when removing your transmission crossmember, or have a professional mechanic do the work. With the car on jack stands, I measured how high the transmission was off of the ground to make sure it stayed in the same place when the Stifflers crossmember was installed. I supported the transmission without blocking access to the OEM crossmember and bolts. I removed the 2 bolts attaching the OEM crossmember to the T5 and the 4 bolts connecting the OEM crossmember to the body mounts. You can see how much and how easily the OEM transmission crossmember bushing moves. That rubber is rubbish. I installed the Stifflers transmission crossmember with the bend facing down, the bushings in the proper position, and the legs pointing toward the back of the car. It fit perfectly in place. I loosely bolted the crossmember to the T5, tightened the 4 bolts attaching the crossmember to the body mounts, then tightened the 2 bolts connecting the crossmember to the T5. It only took me 1 hour and 32 minutes to install the Stifflers transmission crossmember, but I spent another 15 minutes positioning and putting loom and zip ties on the O2 sensor wiring. I've driven over 800 miles and competed in 4 autocross events since installing the Steeda DELRIN shifter bushing and shifter NVH isolator kit and the Stifflers transmission crossmember. My initial thoughts are that these mods make a noticeable difference. The shifts definitely feel more positive. When I rev the engine, the shifter moves less than before. The high RPM shifter rattle is a little better, but it hasn't gone away. Most importantly, I haven't missed a single shift. Having confidence in your car is crucial on an autocross course. Worrying about whether or not my Mustang was going to make it into the next gear was keeping me from attacking at 100%. The Steeda DELRIN shifter bushing and shifter NVH isolator kit and the Stifflers transmission crossmember gave me my confidence back and let me shift my focus from finding gears to finding speed on course.